Yet he got drunk again. Highlight the next 4 lines. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning. What happened to Monday? I came to work on Tuesday morning. I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Okay, so highlight that. Up at the top, we're going to write the word halt. Halt, H-A-L-T. We're going to write hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And right here, Jim is saying, I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Now, I think that anybody who lost a business and had to go back and work as a salesman there, I think that's normal thinking. I'd be a little upset too, man. I'd be teed off, right? So I had a few words with the boss. Hey, Jim, where were you all day Monday, right? But nothing serious. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Okay, so I'm a salesman, and I know that when I leave the showroom, hey, I'm going to drive out, and I did this when I was drinking. I'm going to drive out and maybe hit some job sites. No, man, you leave the showroom, you're not going to make any sales, right? You're not going to make any sales. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Normal, sane thinking for an alcoholic car salesman. On the way, I felt hungry. Circle the word hungry, right? He's angry, he's hungry. I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. Normal, sane thinking for an alcoholic salesman. I had no intention of drinking. Underline that. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar, for I had been going to it for years. Underline the next sentence. I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. Okay, so next to that we're going to write drinking buddies. Right? He's been going to this place for years, so he's got drinking buddies there, right? He used to get drunk there. I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. I mean, that's normal if you're hungry enough, right? Suddenly, we're at squiggly lines, we got to highlight. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. Next to that, we're going to write complete insanity. Complete insanity. But let's highlight that whole paragraph all the way down. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Okay, so after another, right, allergy took over. Right? He's got the booze inside him now. He's got it inside him. He can't stop. The allergy took over.
Wow.
Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim, asylum/treatment center. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that, highlight to the end of the page, of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Okay, so go back to page 36 and underneath the squiggly writing, let's write self-knowledge did not help. Self-knowledge. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic. Yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside. Self-knowledge did not help. Right? Now also on page 36, off to the left near the bottom there, we're going to write 6 words. This is the program in a nutshell. Trust God, clean house, help others. That's the AA program in a nutshell. Trust God. That's what's going to save our lives. Trust God, clean house, help others. If we do that, that self-knowledge, then we're not going to have these mental twists taking over. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. Underline plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You may think this is an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic, underline the next 5 words, of every single one of us, right? We're not unique. We like to think we're unique, but we're not. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. Underline the next 5 words. The insane idea won out. Next day we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity, how could have it happened? Okay, so next to that paragraph where we circled every single one of us, we got another ask sponsee. Ask sponsee, has this happened to you? In other words, you got self-knowledge that if you drink, you're in deep trouble, but all of a sudden some weird little mental twist, and the next thing you know, you're drinking. So let's ask sponsee if this happened to him. So going back to the man of 30 for a while, the allergy, is the real problem. The man of 30 was the guy who stopped for 25 years. So is his real problem the allergy of his body, which ensures that he can't drink safely? Or is his problem in his mind, which tells him that after 25 years of sobriety, it's okay to take a drink? He can drink like other men. The real problem exists in his mind, which tells us it's okay to drink, rather than our body, which demands that we can't drink. Never have we seen a case where an alcoholic can ever be able to drink like a normal man. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. With Jim, does the real problem of Jim exist in his body, right, which assures that we can't drink safely? Or does it exist in his mind, which tells him that it's okay to take a drink if only he mixes it with milk and takes it on a full stomach, right? The real problem centers in the mind, right, which tells us it's okay to drink, rather than the body, which ensures that we can't.
This would be a very non-tasty drink.
Yeah. Well, and it's back, my brother, I was living with my brother. I would get home from work and I'd get a pint of whiskey and I'd pour it in a coffee cup to the brim. I would drink it down and I'd chase it with milk. My brother said, "John, you take that whiskey like it's a pill." And he was right. So I just love that milk thing. I used to do that. So let's see here. In some circumstances, is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Let's highlight the first 3 lines. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. Okay, so next to that, let's write on purpose relapse. On purpose relapse. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we begin to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what, underline, the terrific consequences might be. Right? So, you get in an argument with your spouse, I'll show you, right? I'll show you. We go out and we drink poison, right, to get even. So let's draw a little line under consequences might be, and underneath it write third case. Third case. And we're going to highlight the first 3 lines. This is the jaywalker. Third case. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. So he's out there, he goes down to the freeway, we see him down there, he's skipping in front of trucks, dancing around, twirling, jumping out of the way just in time, he gets a kick out of it. Luck then deserts him and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently he is hit again and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving car breaks his arm. Okay, so next to that paragraph, we're going to write insane behavior. Insane behavior. And then we're going to underline the next sentence. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good. This guy is singing our national anthem. I'm never going to take another drink, I promise. He's singing our national anthem, right? But in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. I'll never go to the bars again. I won't ever go to the liquor stores, I promise you. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and he's held up to ridicule. Underline the next sentence. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. Okay, so off to the left, right, not his body. Right? There's nothing we can do about the allergy of the body. There's nothing. If we take a drink of alcohol, the allergy is going to kick in and we're going to need to drink more. We saw that in the doctor's opinion, so we've got to attack this in our mind. He shuts himself up in an asylum hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit, underline, if we substituted alcohol for jaywalking, just that little phrase there, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, underline, we have been strangely insane. Just that little bit there. It's strong language, but isn't it true? So, with the jaywalker, because of education, and alcoholism is so much more known and it doesn't have the stigma today that it had when this book was written. So because of education, more and more people are coming into AA before they lose everything, right? Most of the first 100 were low-bottom drunks like me. Now occasionally today, somebody comes into these rooms and they're still married, right? Once in a while, somebody comes in and they still have a job, right? Just last week, I saw a new guy. He came in and he still had an automobile, right? So if we talk to these people, about insanity, right? And they say, don't tell me I'm crazy. I haven't lost anything yet. I don't live under a bridge. I got a wife. I got a job, right? Blah, blah, blah. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is one thing and one thing only. Can you or can you not see the truth about alcohol? If we can see the truth about alcohol, we're sane. If we can't see the truth, we're insane, right? So it's a little easier, like for the jaywalker and the low-bottom drunk like Jim, right? A little easier to see. Our next case we're going to read is a high-bottom drunk, where it's going to be a little bit harder for him to see it. But whether you're a low-bottom drunk or a high-bottom drunk, you're going to get drunk the same way, believing something that isn't true. This time it's going to be different. There's going to be a completely different outcome. That whatever what happened to me last week won't happen again, right? So we're going to read about Fred, who's a high bottom drunk. Fred never lost anything. Jim did not feel good the day he got drunk. The guy we're going to read about, Fred, when we get to him, we're going to see that he's on top of the world. So, strong language, but isn't it true? Underneath that, right, we're going to write start of second step. Right where we're at now, they're going to start to warm us up a little bit for step 2. Okay? So we can just write start of second step. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellas did, nor are we likely to. Underline, For we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. Just underline that, and again at the bottom write self-knowledge. So we got self-knowledge. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Underline, thanks for the information. Right? That was me, man. I'd come into these rooms and I would find out about this stuff and I would say, guys, you know what, man? Thank you so much. I'm just not going to start drinking, right? I'll see you later, guys. Have fun at those depressing meetings. Ha ha. See you later, guys. Thanks for the information, right? So at the top of the page, we're going to write We're going to write, need to live our way to better thinking. Actions first. Need to live our way to better thinking. Actions first. Need to live our way to better thinking, actions first. So we've got to move our feet, man. We got to get our feet to meetings. We got to get our feet to meetings with our sponsors. We've got to take the actions of going through the steps and doing the work. We have got to do these actions first. And our book promises us that if we do these actions first, then our thinking is going to follow. Again, any other therapy in the world, they're going to ask us to change our thinking first, and then our actions will get better. But we are backwards people, we alcoholics. We have got to change our actions first. We got to change what we do first. And when we do that, our thinking is going to catch up with us, right? So we're opposite people. That may be true. Thanks for the information, guys. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, through drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. Okay, underline the next 3 lines. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. They're telling us again, man. They're hammering it home. So again, we're going to write something off to the right. We're going to write, let sponsee diagnose himself or herself. Right? Let sponsee diagnose himself, herself. Knowing this, and they're talking about, the disease, knowing this will not save you. You need God. It's going to tell us that. Let sponsee diagnose himself, herself. Knowing this, knowing about the disease, the allergy of the session, will not save you. You need God. And again, the sponsee, the people, and you guys too, you got to diagnose yourself. You've got to concede to your innermost self that you are alcoholic. If you're not unable to do that, then you are still going to be running on self-reliance and you still got another drunk in you. Right? So let sponsee diagnose himself, herself. Knowing this will not save you. You need God. Absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize, underline, emphasize, and re-emphasize, underline, re-emphasize. They're hammering at us, into us, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience, circle bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. Okay, so we can draw our little line somewhere in there and we can write 4th case. And we can highlight the word Fred. Fred is the 4th case. And somewhere in there we can write high bottom drunk. Fred's a high bottom drunk. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. Underline the next 3 lines. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual. Keep highlighting, yet he is alcoholic. Right there. Normal, man. This guy he did nothing. You couldn't pick him out of a crowd. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Underline the next 2 lines. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, He told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. Okay, stop highlighting there. We got plenty of nerve resters here in AA, right? I just need to get away from the sauce for a little bit and rest my nerves. The doctor intimated, so next to intimated you can write hinted. So the doctor's telling him, basically. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days he was depressed about his condition. So just for a couple of days, hey, wow, whoa, bummer. Just a few days. After those few days were over, he forgot all about it. So we're going to highlight to the end of the page. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so. In spite of his character and standing, Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic. Okay, so right there, Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, right? Not take one. Just right there, not take one. So he ended up in the hospital because of the allergy, right? He started drinking and he couldn't control it. But now I'm not an alcoholic. So not take one, much less accept a spiritual remedy. Underline spiritual remedy. And then write, don't take one, can't take two. If you don't take step one, you can't take step two. If you cannot concede to your innermost selves that you're an alcoholic, you're not going to be able to go forward in this program. You simply won't be able to do it. Because you still think that you got that self-reliance. Self-reliance is going to help you control your drinking like other men. Much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. So at the bottom, write unwilling. Unwilling. I don't think he's beat up enough yet. Unwilling. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. Okay, so underline we knew about alcoholism and just draw a little arrow up and write steps 1 and 2. Right? So they told him about the allergy and the obsession, and they told him about the answer they had found. He was interested and conceded he had some of the symptoms. But he was, highlight to the end of the paragraph, but he was a long way from admitting he could do nothing about it himself, right? So Fred's saying, I'm just a little bit alcoholic, just a little bit. He was positive that his humiliating experiences, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Double underline, self-knowledge would fix it. Okay, so next to self-knowledge would fix it, we're going to write not true for the alcoholic. Now this is true of many other things. For example, if somebody, we got the allergy about booze, but let's say that somebody's allergic to strawberries. They eat a strawberry and they go into anaphylactic shock or whatever you call it. That self-knowledge is going to fix it. They're never going to have another strawberry as long as they live, right? But that's not true for the alcoholic. Self-knowledge doesn't do it. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in the hospital. This time he was shaky. He soon indicated, underline 6 words, he was anxious to see us. All right. The story he told is most instructive. For here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking. So he knew he had to stop. Who had no excuse for drinking. Who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns. Underline, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. I mean, everybody says about us alcoholics, and for me, they tell me, you don't have any willpower, you can't stop. Alcoholics have the strongest willpower of just about anybody I've ever seen, except when it comes to this one thing. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellas said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. Okay, underline the next 3 lines. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink. They told him about the obsession, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. Yeah. Next to that, write self-knowledge. They're hammering it home to us that self-knowledge and self-will, willpower isn't going to do it. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellas. Again, I'm just a little bit alcoholic, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men had failed. Highlight to the end of the paragraph, those 3 lines. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. Okay, so next to that, let's write willpower doesn't work. Willpower doesn't work. And again, that's if people aren't convinced, we got to go back to that doctor's opinion and reread it. Now, when I read the next paragraph, circle all the I's like we did in Bill's story. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and I began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. So right here, write dropping his guard. Yeah. Dropping his guard. And then you can write dropping his guard / relapse started here. Right? Old Fred is saying this staying sober business is easy. I get you guys failed, but I'm not gonna. So dropping his guard / relapse started here. Keep circling the I's. Began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day, I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. Underline that last line. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. Okay, squiggly lines. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought, circle thought, as I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails and go back to the hospital. That's the truth. We can't drink on the truth. If Fred saw the truth, he wouldn't take that drink. The thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. Let's keep circling the I's. I ordered a cocktail with my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and I had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Underline the next sentence. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. So next to that paragraph, we're going to write classic blackout. Classic blackout. And if you were never a blackout drinker, that doesn't mean that you're not an alcoholic. Not all alcoholics are blackout drinkers like I was, right? So that's not a get out of jail free card. I remember once I was at St. John's and somebody had a lake home for the weekend, so a bunch of us got a bunch of booze and we went out to this lake home, and we got out there on Friday and we drank all day Friday and Saturday, and I had to be back on Sunday because I had to go to bed so I could get up and go to class on Monday. So I got back on Sunday afternoon to go to bed. The only problem, it was Tuesday. I lost 2 days. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Highlight to ginger ale. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write self-will, self-knowledge. All right, it didn't help. Self-will, self-knowledge. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied, underline, that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. So they told him. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I'm sorry, we got to underline the next 3 lines. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. Right? That's the obsession. And for years I had those strange mental blank spots, and I would take that drink even though I had quit for good, and I could not figure it out. Now hopefully most of us get in here. Unfortunately, many of us get to the point where we start to drink for the sickest reason of all, and that's for oblivion. Right? If you get to the point where you start to drink for oblivion, I got some bad news for you. And the bad news is you're going to wake up and you're going to have to do it again. Right? I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. So this guy had always been able to conquer everything except for this. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. Underline 3 lines. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. Stop highlighting there, and next to that write step 1. Have you had enough? Right? Have you had enough this time? Right? I remember I was at the New Hope Alano. I just got out of detox, and I went into some meetings up there, and I just remember across the table I was telling them about the woes of John Henry and my horrible problems, and a couple guys at the end of the table just started laughing. Right? Man, did I get teed off. But they were laughing because they knew that I was licked, right? And they said they had been there themselves, right? But right here they grinned, which I didn't like so much. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington, underline, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Okay, so next to that we're going to write war stories. Okay, now this is not at a First Step meeting, at an AA meeting when you break off and go to First Step. This is when you're meeting with them on a 12-step call at a hospital or treatment center or something. We can. There's the right time for war stories, but First Step meetings in these AA rooms is not the right time. When we're at First Step meetings, we've got to give people the spirit of hope so that they come back to the meetings, right? But when we're on a 12-step call and we can hammer this home, that's a different situation. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Underline the next 2 lines. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Okay, so next to that write self-reliance. Self-reliance. And I mean, golly, I don't care what happened to me, right? I would the worst possible situation. I just got fired. I didn't have any place to live. Nothing. And I'd look at somebody and, they'd say, well, do you think you're an alcoholic? And I go, well, maybe, but here's what I'm going to do, man. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get another job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I had not given up my self-reliance. Right? Until I said I cannot do this myself, I didn't stand a chance. Highlight the next 2 lines. Then they outline the spiritual answer and program of action, circle action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Okay, so right where it says, then they outline the spiritual answer, right there, write step 2. Step 2. Right? And right where you circled action, you can draw a little line somewhere and write 3 through 12. 3 through 12. So now that Fred's willing to listen, and he's conceded that he can't do the job himself, we're talking about step 2, and then we're going to tell him what we did, steps 3 through 12. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals, circle the word proposals, it's just another word for the steps, were not intellectually hard to swallow. Okay, underline to the end of the paragraph. But the program of action, and circle that word action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. Next to that, write old ideas. We've got old ideas, and I know I'm going kind of fast because we're running out of time. Remember, you can get on YouTube and type in Code Blue Big Book and pick up the notes that you missed because I'm going too fast. Old ideas, that was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, circle process, and write all 12 steps, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. You know, guys, at 6 months sober, going to a meeting every night, my personal relationships were suffering. I couldn't control my emotions. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was near getting fired. I felt useless. I was fearful. I was unhappy. And when these guys said, well, you come to this Code Blue and you go through the work and you're going to see what we're talking about. When I walked over the threshold into my first Code Blue, that same thing happened to me. I had this weird little idea in the back of my head that said, my God, I think it's going to be okay. And it was. Quite as important was the discovery, underline, that spiritual principles would solve all my problems, and circle all. I came here to quit drinking, right? But I fixed my life because, I didn't have a drinking problem. I had a drinking solution. It was my ideas and the way that I lived and what I thought that was all wrong. I have since been brought into a way of living. Highlight the next 3 lines. Infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange the best moments for the worst I have now. Next to that, write promise. Promise. That's a promise. I would not go back to it even if I could, and underline that. So, and you don't need to write this, but you know what the steps are going to do for us. The first thing the steps are going to do is they're going to make life, make life bearable without drinking, right? Bearable. Wow, we can get through. Then the steps are going to make life tenable. Hey, man, this is kind of possible. And then eventually it's going to make life preferable to when we were drinking. If you go through and you do this work, it's going to be preferable. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had only felt the first nip of the ringer, right? My mom had one of those things, right, that you dried clothes with. Highlight the next 2 lines. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Right, again, he was a high-bottom drunk. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. Okay, you can write Dr. Percy Pollack, Pollack, Bellevue, and let's highlight the next 3 lines. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to 2 of you men whose stories I have heard, actually keep highlighting, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. Next to that, write second doctor's opinion. Second doctor's opinion. I can't help you hopeless guys, man. Sorry. I'm not even going to take you. It's a waste of your time and mine. Second doctor's opinion. And the 2 men were Bill W. and Hank P. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for your spiritual approach in such cases as yours. Underline, for most cases, there is virtually no other solution. So this is a man of science who doesn't go to church or anything like that, but he's saying this is your solution. You would better take it. Okay, so highlight the next 2 lines. Once more, they're going to tell us again. The alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Highlight that. And it doesn't say the drinking alcoholic. It doesn't say the practicing alcoholic. It says the alcoholic. I'm coming up on 6 years. I don't care if you're coming up on 20. It's the alcoholic. at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. Underline, his defense must come from a higher power. So that's as true for me today as it was the day I walked into this room. These rooms, it's got to come from a higher power. Almost done. At the bottom, just write 66 pages devoted to step 1 till now. Stop week 5. So counting the forewords and the prefaces, 66 pages devoted to step 1, because guys, if we don't take 1, we can't go forward. They are hammering it in, so that's why when they say, turn to how it works and do it and you'll be fine. No. We've got to get step 1 first. So 66 pages devoted to step 1. Let's end with the third step prayer and we'll get out of here. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace. Thanks, everybody.